Do you see investments as a risk or a massive opportunity? Today on the Remote CEO Life podcast, we're talking about all things investing, specifically focusing on how to invest if you are self-employed. Now, I've learned a lot about investing in the past year, and I've been on my own journey to reprogram some of my limiting beliefs around money and building wealth through investments. But to share more on this subject today is my guest, Hannah Mayfield. She's a qualified financial advisor and the founder of What is Wealth, a financial education platform dedicated to the idea that true wealth is much more than the cash in your account. Through What is Wealth, Hannah helps people demystify investing, build confidence around money, and align their financial choices with their values. Today, we'll be talking about building wealth, money mindsets, retirement funds, and investing, and why understanding and taking action on these isn't just about numbers, but about freedom, choice, and creating a life that allows you the luxury to not need to work if you ever need some planned or unplanned time off. Now, this conversation is a great place to start if you are on the fence about how to invest your money. So let's dig right into it. I'm excited to chat about this. Like finance is a really hot topic for me right now, and I've been doing a lot of work on like managing my finances and getting them back to a place of where I'm making really smart decisions, smart investments. So I'm excited to have this conversation and hopefully validate all the things that I've been doing for myself. But before we kick into that, do you want to give us a little bit more about your background and your journey into finance?
Yeah, so I come from like not a traditional finance background. It's very much like my life circumstances kind of like put me on this path. So I actually used to work in fashion buying, was kind of like started on my career in that. And then when I was 22, my dad passed away and I inherited some money, and I'd grown up with a single mom. So I had this kind of like one experience of money that meant I was very good at saving and budgeting, like, because, it was like one experience, like that's how I could be able to do things. So I always had that kind of down really well. And then when I had this money from my dad, I was like, I don't know what people do with money. I've never had any conversations about investments. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know who to speak to about this. So it was this journey where I had to kind of learn. I tried to speak to finance professionals and just found them, to be honest, really unhelpful. I don't know if I was unlucky. I tried quite a few and I was like, I don't really trust you guys. None of you care about the ethical side of things. They're just kind of like, yeah, we'll manage your money for you and charge you loads to do it. So anyway, I taught myself, realized like actually investing can be kind of simple once you understand it. I used to believe like it was like gambling and I could lose money, and then kind of figured it out in a way, started teaching my friends. They started making good money with their stock market kind of portfolio. And I was like, oh, this is actually really unfair. Like, if you don't happen to have me as your mate, you just might not ever know this stuff. And so then I kind of, it also coincided with wanting to be remote, trying to figure out what I could do remote. And I was like, actually, I've learned loads about money and investing. Like, that I'm helping my friends with it. Like, it kind of made sense to make that a career path. And then I trained qualified as a financial advisor, did all my training. Don't do like regulated financial advice. It's like a different thing. So it's all financial education, which is like legally different. So I work with people one-to-one, have courses about investing, and I've started doing a lot more work with corporates as well. So I'm like going in and doing workshops, lunch and learns, done some content creation for fintech brands. It just kind of like has taken on a bit of a life of its own, which is cool because I think there aren't enough, especially women, speaking about money on the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I actually love that story. That's so amazing that you've been able to take your own experiences with finance, because it's not, like you say, it's not the traditional route into finance. And it's amazing that you've got such a different perspective of it, because like you said, unfortunately, I'm so sorry that you had to go through that at such a young age with your dad. And you've got that experience then turned completely on its head, the way you've been able to make something really positive from, like, obviously a negative experience. You've been able to take that that money that you've had and you got it unexpectedly and bring that into your future career path, which I think is a really positive thing. And I really resonate actually with what you said around, like, you got this money and you didn't know what to do with it. And I've actually had a couple of family members recently come into a lot of money unexpectedly, and same situation. Like, they don't come from money. They've never had money from their whole life. Some of them are in their 40s and they've never had money throughout their whole life. And suddenly they've come into this like quite big sums of money and they don't know what to do with it. And they've, as you said, they went to financial advisors and they were, the financial advisor is essentially making money off of you having money. So that doesn't feel that ethical. So I love what you've said there around like training people how to actually do that for themselves. And talk to me a little bit about that process then that you kind of went through to teach yourself. Like how did you do that?
Well, it was quite hard because I opened my first like stock market investments 7 years ago now. And we kind of forget, but the world has changed a lot in 7 years. There was not as much information available 7 years ago as like I'm going next week to the Finfluencer Awards, like financial influencer. Like that wasn't not a thing 7 years ago. So I really had to patch lots of things together. So it was like I think it was mainly books, honestly. I don't even think I listened to podcasts at that time. It was just, I feel like that information has really changed. So yeah, it was books. I was reading a lot about the kind of investing methodologies called index investing. And sometimes with this, what I also find with money and investing, it's like learning a different language. And sometimes people think they're bad at money, but it's just a different language. It's just different words. You just don't know what they mean. It's not a you thing. It's a confusing industry. So I kind of found that, I think, mainly through books, and then kind of like patched stuff together and probably made it a bit more complicated than it needed to be, but it worked. So like I opened that investment account 7 years ago, and like my money has now doubled. So it's like, and basically what happened was I started with property investing, and then I spoke to this guy who I was hoping could be like a property mentor. And he was like, oh yeah, I'm selling all of my property and just putting it into my stock market investments because they were up 20% last year and I don't have to do anything for it. And I was like, oh, like 20%. I was like, that's quite a lot in a year. Maybe I should like get serious about looking into this. So that was when I taught myself. And that's why I also think is that unless people, sometimes I try and say how much my money has grown because I used to never know that. I never used to know really what like I was missing out on or what a normal amount of growth was or like anything about it. And then when he told me that number, I was like, oh, I should be taking this seriously. And that kind of like kicked off the stock market investing journey.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot is all around lack of education, right? Like a lot of people don't have access to the education. Well, I mean, everyone can access it actually now, but like previously, like you mentioned, 7 years ago, no one would even know where to look for it. So it's really great that you may be able to find the resources, the books, the things that you needed to help you learn that. But I think a lot of people have this mindset of, well, that's not possible for me. Like even if I did have any money, which a lot of people are struggling for money because cost of living crisis and all of that, and potential recessions on the pipeline, like actually, like when you learn how to manage your money, invest properly, and eliminate a lot of fear around it, you can have really big rewards. But I don't think people realize that. They see it as such a big risk. Like whenever I talk to my parents, for example, about investing my money in the stock market or anything that's outside of the norms, like not a premium bond, not an ISA kind of thing, or a savings account with a certain interest rate, they're like, oh, well, that's a bit risky. And it's like people are fearful of investing, and it's really a mindset that you have to shift out of and look at it as a, yes, there is risk associated with it, but there's also so much opportunity, and it's about educating yourself to the point of understanding what that opportunity is and where the risk is, and trying to find your happy medium, I guess, in between that and your certain risk level. Was there an element of mindset work that you had to do to be able to invest that money and feel like comfortable that you were, and trusting that you were going to get a return on it at some point, or being able to also acknowledge the risk associated with investment as well?
Yeah, I think there's a few factors to it. And I think like you said, it's like identifying the risk is really important. And then there's a quote that's like, risk comes from not knowing what you're doing. So I think a lot of it was that, like you said, the education part. So understanding, okay, this index investing strategy, I understand it. It makes sense to me. I understand how it works. So like, that's the kind of method I'm going to go down. So that really helped like finding that strategy. And then I did have to kind of rewrite. A big thing that made it click for me was I realized that pensions are just investments in the stock market as well. And when we say stock market, it sounds like this weird thing, but it's just buying bits of companies. And companies are all designed to make profits. So if you own a little bit of that company, you are therefore entitled to a bit of their profits. And that's literally how everything works. Like it's kind of when you start thinking to it, you're like, oh, that's how the whole world is set up right now. Like under capitalism, it's like companies make profit, shareholders make, get some of that profits back. that's how it works. It's designed to grow. So, and when I realized that, oh, like my pension is invested in these companies too, and like you're really encouraged to invest in your pension, that's seen as a very sensible thing to do. The government like really incentivize people to put money into a pension with like tax top ups and stuff. So I was like, oh, okay, then maybe it isn't that risky. So I think that's like the first mindset shift is like actually doing nothing is quite risky. You know, you wouldn't, if you didn't put your money into a pension account that was invested, you would never be able to retire. And like another big click for me was understanding about inflation and how like keeping your money in cash savings just means you can buy less and less and less with it over time. And we can kind of see this like in 1975, I think the average house in the UK was like £50,000. So you can imagine if someone 50 years ago kept that 50K in the bank and then like today was like, I'm going to buy a house with it, they would have a big shock. Like the average house price now, I think, is at 270. So you can see like, okay, cash doesn't work in the long run. So actually the flip for me was like, oh, cash is risky over decades. So then it kind of like forced my hand into the investing. Like I am inherently quite risk averse, but it kind of made me be like, oh, actually doing nothing is kind of a risk as well.
Yeah, there's risk in both sides, but I think because cash is something that we can physically see and control, it feels safer, right? Like because we're more in control of it. And I think when we're in control of something, we naturally associate that with a bit more having more safety around it. But I guess also there is an element of control with where you're investing. But again, it comes from having that that understanding, that education. And I spoke to someone recently that was like, competence is confidence, right? So if you understand what you're doing, you're going to feel way less way more less fearful around actually doing that element of investing and putting your money in somewhere, because you're going to know how to control it and you're going to know how to make it less risky for yourself. So I guess, yeah, like there's so much risk associated with having money in cash. There's also risk in having an investment. So it's like just choose your risk and choose what is going to be best for you. And in the most cases, probably investing is going to be the better option. And for me personally, like I always looked at myself, particularly when I was came from the same background as you in buying. And when I was in that buying career, I was on very good money. And I always had a decent amount of money in my bank account. But I really regret now not doing anything with that. Like I did for a long time have a stocks and shares ISA, but I always thought that I couldn't invest because I didn't know anything about it, and I would invest when I understood it. But I never taught myself. I never took the action to actually educate myself on how to invest that money. So I just made that assumption about myself of, oh, well, I can't invest because I don't understand the investment. But it's only more recently that probably in the past like 9-10 months actually that I've started to shift that mindset of like, well, it's like you said, there's risk on both sides. And I sold a property last year, and before that all my money was invested in that property more or less, and I had some cash but not a lot. It was mainly in the property. When I sold the property and I got quite a lot of equity back from that property, I was like, well, what do I do with it? And there's an element of like, I'm actually scared of like what to do with this money now. Like how do I put it somewhere that feels less risky? So I chose the least risky option. And then it's only more recently that I've been like, well, I'm not getting anything from this money. Like it's literally sitting in premium bonds and I'm getting absolutely nothing from these premium bonds. So now I'm like shifting where I'm investing. And it's been such a hot topic for me over the past 4 or 5 months to like move all my money around and make sure it is invested in the right places. So yeah, I fully resonate with everything that you've said there, and I agree that there's risk from both sides, and it is just a mindset shift of like really understanding that you can get way more reward if you do take one risk over the other. And I love what you said around the pensions, because yeah, it's true. Like, because we're not really educated on what we know what pension is. When we get the pension, we don't really educate on what actually is happening with our pension until the point of us receiving it. So I fully resonate and get everything that you said there. It makes a lot of sense. And something that stood out to me in the form that you filled in to help me understand about yourself was that you mentioned that true wealth is more than just the cash in your account. I would love to hear your kind of interpretation of that and how you kind of came to that realization.
Yeah. So I did about a year ago, I'd been doing this financial education stuff just under my name, and then I rebranded it to What is Wealth, because I thought like, it's just a good question. And obviously there isn't one I think you can kind of define it how you want to, but I think sometimes it's money is very emotional. It's not just about the numbers. It's obviously about what that can do for you in your life. And I think for me, especially like all the experience I had with my dad, it's like time is the thing that we can never get back. And most of us are swapping our time for money, and that there is this like real relationship between the two. And for me, I'm like, if you have savings, ideally, if you can like start building up investments, like for me, that just gives you freedom and optionality. And one of the best things I ever did was I took a bit of a step back from my career kind of a long time ago when my nan was really sick and was able to spend time with her. I'm like, that's the best thing I've ever been able to do. And like most people, if you're not like, that is a privilege, and it is because I had savings. So I'm like very passionate about those. And we're often kind of influenced to maybe put our money into other places, and we're not so influenced to be like, no, like keep that for you and like send it forward to your future self and put it in the right place. So I think wealth is like very individual for people of what it can be. But for me, I think one definition is definitely kind of how long can you go without working? Because at some point in your life, like someone will get ill, or you might get ill, or like something might happen where you just need to take a step back. Or especially I work a lot with women, like motherhood is a huge thing for many women that is like financially very punitive. So it's like you kind of, if you can send money forward, if you're in the position to, then yeah, it's really powerful of what you could do for your future self.
Yeah, I really resonate with that more than ever at the moment because my dad has just been quite sick, and I am still working, but it's meant that I've had to stay in the UK, and I don't live in the UK. I live in Thailand, so I've had to stay in the UK for an extended period of time, and having the flexibility of the fact that I do have now some investments working for me. I also have my business that works for me, and that freedom around that. Wealth creates a level of freedom that allows you to be there and take time as and when you need to take the time. And I think that is like, that's literally the biggest level of freedom that you can achieve, I think. And obviously having investments is a cheat code for freedom. That's something else that you mentioned in your form. So talk us through something like some practical steps for somebody that is listening to this and being like, wow, I really need that level of freedom in my life because I've got XYZ thing that I need to be more present for and be able to take some time off work and really be there for people in my life. How can somebody start using their savings or investments as that tool to allow them that time off work? So specifically for people that are running their businesses or working remotely, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it's kind of having a plan, I guess, of, okay, how much would I ideally love to be putting into either like paying off any expensive debt? You kind of want to get rid of that first because you're just going to be getting charged a lot for it. It's the same, like you're still growing your net worth. It's still the same thing. Then it's the kind of focus on having savings. So maybe like 3 to 6 months worth of savings, ideally, just giving you that buffer. And then it's kind of like, okay, maybe if I have extra cash or income I don't need for 5 years at least, then that's the kind of long-term pot that I could use for investing. So it's kind of, I think, just setting goals around it as well, and like having that as an intention. And something I always find, and like I'm sure someone will listen to this, is like there's this thing of being like, I'll invest when I have more money, or I don't have enough to invest. And I'm always like, well, if you kind of like, if you're someone who can go on holidays or you have some disposable income, like you can do £25 a month. I even put £5 a month into a junior ISA for my godchildren because I'm like, they've got a long time. £5 a month, like over 20 years, like by the time they're, 18 years, maybe by the time they're 18, like will add up, especially when you kind of factor in the investment income they'll make. So I think also that might be a mindset shift, is that actually small amounts are worth it as well. And I know I've kind of, my experience was having this bigger chunk, but actually lots of people that work with me have these small amounts and they're like, well, I just need to get on with it and do it. And it's easy to kind of, if you start with a smaller amount, you can build it up. And I think having the pot and having the infrastructure and having like the actual account set up is the huge step. And then actually just like funneling more into it, you can do later. But like getting that first £100 put in or whatever, even if you're not contributing any more to it, like just knowing you have it there ready to fill up, I think is also quite powerful, because then you have switched to become an investor. And then also there's different when, you've got skin in the game, you've got your money in it, like you're just going to be checking it and you're going to have a different level of tangibility of like seeing it go up and down and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think setting goals around, either you can kind of do it working forwards of being like, okay, I could put aside £50 a month, £500 a month, like whatever position you're in, I could do that. And then the other way is kind of set the goal of being like, actually, it would be really great to have like 10 grand in savings. So how much can I kind of, if I would like that in a year's time, what does that work out as a month? If I gave myself 2 years, what does that work out a month? And
Yeah.
just like looking at the numbers basically and like, yeah, spending some time with it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good point that you made about the mindset around like, I don't have enough to invest. I definitely had that mindset for a long time, and I did have enough. Like this was the even more stupid thing is I did have money to invest, but for some reason I've had this massive scarcity belief around money um leaving, like money going, like spending money, and that's stupid because I will happily go out and spend money on a gym class, like a reformer Pilates class, which is £25, like
Yeah.
I'll happily go out and spend £5 on my matcha latte every day, but then I won't put £5 a month into investments. That doesn't make sense when that money could make me back another £5 next month to go and pay for my matcha. Like it
Yeah.
all it's just it's a massive cycle with money. I think like we spend and then we receive and then we spend. Like it's just a massive cycle, and I think shifting through money mindset blocks is the only way really to be able to feel comfortable enough to invest. But on top of that, you have to take the action. And I agree with you. Sometimes setting up that account is the hardest part because you have to part with money to be able to set up. Like I recently set up a Vanguard account, and I literally just put £500 in just to test the waters, like initially, before I then am like feeling really, really confident and being like, right, I'm going to put the rest of my savings in there, or like a percentage of my savings in there, so that I can start small. Exactly what you said, start small, see how it operates, understand it a little bit better, and then I'm going to feel more comfortable to put more money into it. So I think exactly what you said, like even if you just have £25, £100, whatever it is, put it in there, because it's definitely going to be something that then you can learn more about. And like you said earlier, like competence is confidence. So the more competent you feel with parting with that money, put it in the investments and seeing what happens with it, you're going to feel way more confident to put more money in there and then see the bigger returns. But what kind of things then do you recommend when you're working with clients that they start with investing in?
I think index investing is like a really good strategy for most people. I think you can do it from like lots of different amounts. So yeah, I mean, maybe I won't go into the whole explanation, but I think that's giving you enough of like a breadcrumb to kind of go away and Google. And it's basically a method of stock market investing that I think helps. It kind of helps spread your money across lots of different companies, basically. Because if you imagine like however many years ago I put all my money in Blockbuster, at one point that would have seemed like a really good decision. Like they were everywhere until they're not. So if I'd have put all of my money into one company and tried to pick the best one, that's like not really a smart strategy. Whereas actually, if I'd spread my money across like 500, 1,000, 2,000 companies across the whole world, potentially, then it's really hard for my money to go to zero. So a lot of the way that I like to invest, how can I make this really hard to lose money?
Uh-huh.
Because actually making it with investments, that's like the whole system is set up to do that. Like it seems hard. That's actually not the hard part. The hard part is like, how can you do it in a way where it minimizes losses? So, and
Yeah.
that's what I think index investing is really good for. So I kind of would say for as a starting point, like learn about that.
Yeah. And is there a specific platform that you recommend people to start looking at? Is there like specific resources? I know you obviously have your own resources on this subject as well, but is there a starting point that's like really breaks it down super beginner for somebody that is like feeling super overwhelmed by this?
Yeah, I think there's actually so many platforms now. It's a bit overwhelming, and it does depend on like how much you want to invest, because some platform fees are better than others for like if you're doing a small amount monthly or if you have a big lump sum, or like it's kind of varies. So I don't really have one that I would say, but I do think if you want the simplest way, like robo advisors are a really great way to start, because they'll kind of give you a little quiz to kind of like assess your risk tolerance based on whatever they define risk as and like their kind of criteria. But yeah, robo advisors are the kind of the easiest way to start. Sometimes they can be a bit more expensive fees wise, and like ideally you don't want to be paying a lot in fees. And when I say a lot, I mean like less than 1%. Ideally 1%. If I was going for dinner, I wouldn't really care if I wouldn't pick a restaurant based on which one was 1% cheaper. But if I have an investment platform that's going to be 1% cheaper, that is actually mega. So that is like something that I would say have on your radar as well when you're looking at these platforms. Is that fees actually are really important.
Yeah, definitely. That's advice that I've also been given from
Yeah.
someone that I was speaking to about my personal investments, and she mentioned that if it's like 0.3% would be quite a good investment fee, and that was something that I looked for specifically when I was assessing where I should start with this. Because I think it's like when you, especially if you're self-employed and you're a business owner, I think there is an element of like, okay, we don't always know that our income is going to be fully consistent. Like anything can kind of happen. We're not, I mean, it can in a job as well. We could be made redundant at any moment in time, but it feels more risky, obviously, when you are a business owner, when you have you're more in control of your own money, because you're like, well, what if I make a mistake? Like, what's going to happen? What will happen to my business? What will happen to my lifestyle? All of these things. So I guess, like, is there any way that we can, how do we, I guess, safeguard ourselves from those risks as business owners? Is this the solution, to put it into investments and that's safeguarding ourselves? Like, what kind of advice would you give someone that specifically is self-employed?
I think it is having a good cash savings buffer so that, like you said, if you have a lower month or couple months or whatever, you can fund your lifestyle. And I also think when you're self-employed or business owner, you have to take you're taking like 100% responsibility of your money in every single way. So it's kind of like sick pay, pension, cash flow, like paying yourself. Like, you're taking 100% responsibility of money. So I think learning about money and spending time on it is obviously really important. I would say a lot of self-employed people probably aren't putting enough into their pensions. I know that's like really boring, but it is gonna it's gonna be scary one day, and it's really hard to catch up if you don't start doing it, because in the way it works, like it does grow exponentially over time, and the longer you can give your money to grow, the better. Like ideally, it should be, if your money's making 8% for you a year, which is the average, it means it's doubling every 9 years. So the aim of the game is really to try and like get as many 9-year chunks in as possible with your money. And like
Yeah.
£1 that I'd put in today, therefore, is doing the job of like £2 that I'd have to put in 9 years' time. So I think that's
Yeah.
also, people get really dismissive, like, oh, it's not a lot that I could put in right now. But it's like, yeah, but you're going to have to put double as much in if you leave it another like 9 years. So like just put the £1 in now and let it do its
Yeah.
thing.
No, it's very true.
Yeah.
Again, it's all just comes down to like fear. I think the biggest part is fear, and that's the biggest thing that you have to overcome when you're putting it in there, because you think, oh, I need it right now, and there is an element of like, live your life, and you never know if tomorrow is guaranteed, kind of thing. So just do what you need to do in that moment in time. But then there is also an element of like, well, if I do get to, at the moment the retirement age is just about to go up, so I think it's to 68 in the UK. Like, what happens when, by the time that I'm 68, it's probably going to be 72, let's say, like the retirement age. So what happens when I'm 72 and the state pension, if I don't even live in the UK, so God knows what would happen with my state pension, but the state pension is not going to be probably enough to live off of the cost of living that we're seeing at the moment. And then if I don't have anything on top of that, like, really, like, what do you do? And I've got a friend that she's about to turn 50, and she's never invested her money. She's never really looked after her money, and she's panicking. Honestly, she's really panicking, and she's also self-employed and has been for a long time. And she had other backup options at some stage in her life that she thought was going to work out, but didn't work out because it wasn't actually hers to work out. So I think it really is about like advocating for yourself and thinking about like the future you, as hard as that is to imagine right now at the age of 33, me thinking about myself in 30 years time when I want to potentially retire. It's like, okay, well, how am I going to be able to do that? And like you say, it is that really forward thinking. Everyone that I speak to that understands investments and is into investments is like, I wish I'd done this sooner. Like, I haven't met one person that's like, oh, I did this at the right stage of my life. There's no right time. We just have to do it. And I think it is just taking like baby steps maybe to start off with, to make yourself feel more comfortable, and then going all in with it as and when you feel like it's the right time. But I love what you said, the reference that you mentioned about putting money into an ISA for your godchildren and starting literally with £5 a month. there's so much to be said about that. Like that's going to be worth a lot of money at some point down the line. And now we've got AI to do all of the forecasts for us as well. So I've been actually mapping out some of my own investments using AI to say, right, well, how could this look like? Give me different scenarios, because I think when you can see it in front of you, you're more likely to be like, oh, okay, I can see the opportunity. A lot of people don't know how to work out the opportunity, but we've got like so many more tools now to help us see it, figure it
Yeah.
out.
I think it's a good point, because it's such an intangible thing. Like, oh, I should, and I think it's such a should. People are like, oh, I should really invest, but like I said, until I had that conversation with that guy who was like, it's up 20%. I was like, okay, like I get, like now my brain has something really tangible to understand what this means. I can actually get on with it. And I would say as well, if you're using AI or forecasting or whatever, it is a good idea. Just there's, or you can Google like compound interest calculator, and you can put in like, okay, if I put in this amount every month and it grows, I normally put in 8%, because that's been on average like how much all companies in the world have gone up on average over the past 30 years. So like you maybe use 8% as a starting point. Yeah, that then you can see how much it will grow, and like over the different time periods, what it will work out in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. And then when you see the real tangible numbers, I think that's when it starts to click as well. You're like, oh, okay. Like, I want
Yeah,
to use this.
definitely. You need to see something that's tangible for it to make sense to you, right? In it, we've also spoken a little bit about like ISA accounts and savings accounts and cash and things like that. So is there an ideal split from your personal experiences or things that you speak to with your clients about how you're splitting your money between the investments, between the ISAs, between the savings accounts? Like how do you recommend people work that out for themselves?
Yeah, I think it obviously like depends on you and your needs, and if you have dependents and stuff like that. But I think the main place to start is, yeah, paying off the expensive debt. And then with terms of savings, I think of it in terms of time. Like instead of being like, okay, have I got 3 months living expenses? Have I got 6 months living expenses? Like maybe if you have kids and an unstable income, you would love to have 12 months living expenses in a savings account. And then anything over that you think you won't need for 5 years plus, you put in investment accounts. Or and pensions are really normally the best tax, they call it like tax efficient, because if you put your money in a pension, you'll get top ups from the government. And maybe if you have a like company, you can also pay less tax. So it's it's a good thing to talk to your accountant about, I would say, is be like, okay, how should I be like optimizing my pension and using my company to do that? But the ISA account, I think sometimes also people get confused, think an ISA is a type of investment, but an ISA just means like anything you make in this account is tax free. So you can have cash ISAs, stocks and shares ISAs, but it's basically saying like if you're in the UK and you're a UK tax resident, like anything you put in here, anything you make on it, you have to pay tax on. And then you pick what you put in it. So they're a massive perk. Like most countries don't let you have loads of tax-free investment income. Like being able to put £20,000 in a stocks and shares ISA every single year is kind of crazy perk, to be honest. So yeah, you definitely want to take advantage of all the tax stuff. And actually, when I did my financial advisor qualification thing, I was quite shocked about was how much of it was about tax. Like I thought a lot of it was going to be about like where to put your money and how to make it grow, and actually so much of it is like how to optimize to pay less tax, and not in a kind of like weird tax evadey way, but it's like the system's very complicated and there's all these different kind of like products and types of accounts, and if you don't know about them, but I love having a good accountant to kind of ask those questions too.
Yeah,
So
it
yeah, I
helps.
think if you have an accountant that does your company accounts or whatever, if they file stuff for you, be like, what's the most tax efficient way I should be planning for my future in terms of like pension savings investments? And they won't be able to like tell you where to put it, but they can tell you from the tax perspective, like what they would suggest. And that can be really helpful as well. Like use these finance professionals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. It's definitely good to soundboard it off of somebody else and get validation sometimes for
Yeah.
even if you think you know the answer, just asking the question to somebody that definitely does know the answer is very validating and can help you make some good decisions, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we haven't spoken about about investing that you would like to share today? Because I don't know enough about it to pull out any other topics from it. But is there anything that we haven't already covered that you think somebody would need to know if they're about to start investing?
I think that's it. I think like have your strategy, know that it's going to go up and down a lot. So you also have to be prepared for that. Like that's, I kind of call that the price of admission. It's like, okay, great. Maybe my money's going to grow for me. But the kind of like flip side of that is it's not going to grow in like a steady, predictable way, like an interest on a cash savings account. It's going to go up and down. So you have to be prepared for that and have to know like, what am I going to do if, yeah, like we haven't had a recession for ages. At some point, you're going to open your stocks and shares account and it's going to be a lower number. Depending on when you put your money in, it might even be lower than what you put in the first place, which is going to be, you know, like, so you have to be able to manage yourself through that because that is the process. So I think like having that education, understanding, like proper plan for the future, knowing how it's all going to play out, be confident in your investing strategy is like really helpful.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it is just like if you're stressing about it, whether whatever money you have as well, like, even if you have a lot of money, start small because sometimes people just get paralyzed because they're like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to put so much in. But like you said, like I actually just started with an amount that felt safe enough to put in, just so you've got it set up, and then you'll start to like look at it in a different way. Because sometimes our brain is we're so loss averse, it is really scary. We don't know, it is unpredictable. So yeah, you kind of have to figure out ways around it to make yourself do it and not put it off as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the longer we put it off, the longer we're actually losing, right? So
Yeah,
I
because
think
nothing's good bad is going to happen if you put it off, really. Like that's the issue that they're kind of, and it, like I find this when I'm working and like trying to do marketing, I'm like, oh, how can I make this like slightly more urgent for people? Because you could just put this off forever. And then like you said, one day you might get to like 50 and be like, oh, I wish I'd have done this in my 30s.
uh,
But like in the moment, like there's no harm in pushing it next week. Like nothing bad's really happening. So it's really hard to kind of force yourself to have the urgency around it as well.
I think you just sometimes have to just do it, right? Like you have to go for it. And I also think sometimes it takes people to have a bit of a shake up with their finances or something like that to understand the value in those things. Like that's definitely what happened to me. Like I had a bit of a blip, let's say, with my finances last year, and I was suddenly like, reality check, Sophie, come on, wake up. Like I thought my whole life I was good with money, quote unquote. Like, and I wasn't bad with money, but I also, over the past couple of years, particularly since I became self-employed, became very avoidant with money and any issues that I was having or any stupid things that I was doing. And then I had a bit of a reality check and was like, oh, okay, I need to sort this out. Like I have to sort this out right now because otherwise it's going to leave me in quite a difficult situation. So I think sometimes you have to, unfortunately, hit those reality check points, whether you've been made redundant, for example, or, you know, you're changing circumstances, big life changes are happening. You suddenly get woken up a little bit to the fact that you need to do something with it.
Yeah.
Otherwise you could leave yourself in a very vulnerable position. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that wisdom and advice and all of your own experiences today. I really appreciate that. And obviously the whole point of us creating wealth for ourselves is to create a little bit more freedom in our lives, like we mentioned at the beginning. Freedom, whether that's to go and spend time off of work when you need to take it, or freedom to live in the certain way that you want to live. So I'd love to hear about what freedom actually means for you.
To be honest, like the main thing for me has been location independent because I live in Lisbon. That's been the biggest kind of driver of me reshaping my career, is that I just wanted to be able to be where I wanted to be. And that's meant it's quite uncomfortable as well. I think keeping money and growing it in investments is very different to earning money by yourself on your own name. Like it's been a huge journey of kind of like putting yourself out there, pitching yourself constantly, marketing. Like you just have such a different relationship with money because you have to like constantly be bringing it in. Well, unless maybe you're on like a really long-term retainer or something and you're kind of slightly more employee-esque, even if you
Yeah.
work for yourself. But yeah, for me, it's really been like location independence is my main driver. I've like just always wanted to be wherever I want to be. And I also like freedom for me is being able to do things I want to do. Like I'm writing a book at the minute, so I'm spending about an hour a day, and like to have that flexibility in my day and that capacity to do that is just amazing. And if you can kind of use money to help you do those important things in life, yeah, that's like I think freedom is something I really value in terms of, I guess, for myself, and in terms of like looking at it in my personal goals, it's a big driver.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel you with the location. Obviously I've been nomadic for the past few years. So definitely location freedom is a big one up there for me. So I feel you with that. That's great. And thank you so much for sharing everything. How can anyone find you if they want to connect?
Yeah, I am on Instagram, Hannah What Is Wealth, LinkedIn, I'm Hannah Mayfield. And if you want to kind of learn a bit more about that index investing, I have a 5-day free email course that'll kind of like take you through the basics that you need to know in 5 days.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I really appreciate you sharing all your wisdom.